Hello, my name is Daniel Bullen and I'm 17 years old, and this is a story about how I was diagnosed with a rare condition called Myasthenia gravis and how I lost but managed to find my smile. I was born on the 20th of August 2001, a healthy and happy baby boy. I was just an ordinary kid doing what ordinary kids do, running around and having fun. The first signs of my illness was on prom night in June 2017, where I was having my photos taken before I left for prom, and my mum was telling me to smile properly. She realised that my smile wasn't the same as it used to be. I went to prom that day and had a great night. The first symptoms I ever experienced was at my cousin's 17th party in July 2017. I had just eaten a chicken nugget and went over to talk to my friends, but I started to realise that my tongue was too big for its mouth and I started to slur my words. At first I thought I had eaten something I was allergic to, but then I had realised I had eaten these foods before, so it couldn't have been that. I went over and spoke to Megan, my sister, and Jasmine, my cousin, where they started to laugh at me because they thought I was drunk. But after the first 5 minutes the symptoms went away, and we laughed about the situation, and we still do today. I didn't bother mentioning it to my parents as I wasn't concerned about what was going on. Then it came to my family holiday in August 2017, where the symptoms started to develop into something worse. In the first 3 days of holiday I was being told to go to bed early and open my eyes, as my eyes were drooping. But to me everything felt normal and it didn't feel like I was doing anything different. When I was going out and meeting new people, I experienced the same symptoms of my tongue too big for my mouth. This meant that when I was trying to talk to them I became embarrassed, as I started to slur my words. During the days on holiday I started to realise that my legs were becoming weak and I couldn't play football as long as I normally would have. I kept my speech problems away from my parents, and I don't know why. As photos came through on my phone, I started to look at all of them and realised that my smile was different. I then deleted all these photos off my phone as I didn't want them on there, as I was embarrassed about the way I looked. This meant that when it came to the photos getting sent round, I would get upset, as I didn't want people to notice how my smile was different. I tried to avoid being in photos as I was embarrassed about the way I looked. When I got home from holiday, I went on a dog walk with my mum around these roads, where I then explained to her the symptoms I was experiencing. When I was explaining it to her, she could hear my tongue started to go and my speech started to slur. When we got home, she then started to Google the symptoms I was explaining to her, where she then booked a doctor's appointment. My first appointment with Dr. Norwood, I started to explain the symptoms I was experiencing, and she booked me in for tests. My tests were held at King's College Hospital, Denmark Hill. I had a blood test to see how many antibodies were produced, and I had an EMG test, which is where they test the electrical signals sent from your brain to your muscles. I also had a CT scan, which is where they insert dye into your body to see if there's any abnormalities with your organs. I am terrified of needles, and on the way home from having my blood test done, I passed out on the train. The whole thing was scary, but after I got my results and it confirmed myasthenia gravis, it was a sense of relief, as I finally had an answer to what was causing my symptoms. I was prescribed Mestinon, which is this bottle, and it looks like this. I went and collected my prescription straight away after receiving it, and then we went to my grandma's house where I tried out the medication to see if it worked. We had to wait half an hour before we saw if it had any effect. Although it didn't help bring back my smile completely, it brought back the ability to eat and drink, which was a huge relief, as I was finally able to eat my dinner properly. I was going up to the hospital for regular checkups with Dr. Norwood, where she then introduced me to Shauna Hughes, a myasthenia nurse.
My name is Shauna Hughes and I'm a clinical nurse specialist in Myasthenia gravis at King's College Hospital.
Who is it that funds you?
So for the first 2 years of my job, MyAware kindly funded the role, so they had a big donation into the charity and they were able to pump money into King's to be able to pay me to be here for the 2 years, and then after the 2 years the hospital took over the funding.
So who is the youngest patient you have ever seen and who does it affect?
So myasthenia affects between 10 and 15,000 people in the UK, so it can be from quite a young age up until adult. Women are usually diagnosed younger in their life, whereas men tend to be diagnosed a little bit older than that. The youngest patient I've seen at King's is you, so we are doing a transition service, so we take patients from the age of 16 onwards, And we've also seen some babies here as well where their mothers have had myasthenia and they've had to be looked after on our neonatal unit, just as there's a risk of the mother's antibodies passing on to the baby, and the baby can kind of demonstrate symptoms of myasthenia for the first 3 months of their life as well.
What are the types of myasthenia?
So there's a few different types. Firstly, there's generalized myasthenia, and then that kind of divides down into two categories. So patients with acetylcholine antibodies and patients with MuSK antibodies. That type of myasthenia will affect you from head to toe. Symptoms usually start with the eyes and then work their way down the body. There's another type of myasthenia called LEMS, and that's Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome, and that's kind of a reverse of the generalized myasthenia, so symptoms start from the bottom up. And then there's ocular myasthenia as well, which just affects patients' eyes and their eyes only. And the general rule of thumb is that if you're a patient with ocular myasthenia for 2 years, it won't progress on to generalized myasthenia. And then lastly, there's congenital myasthenic syndrome, which is a very rare form of myasthenia that's based on your genetic makeup.
What are the types of treatments for myasthenia?
So there's a number of different treatments we can give patients. So firstly, we would start with a medication called pyridostigmine, which is also known as Mestinon. It's a small white tablet that you would take every 4 hours or so. It just boosts the kind of activity between the nerve and muscle throughout your body at the neuromuscular junction. We would often have patients on immunosuppressive drugs as well, so we would start patients on steroids quite frequently, just to try and dampen down their immune system and stop those antibodies being produced. If the steroids aren't really that effective, we would move on to what we call disease-modifying agents. So they would be mycophenolate, methotrexate, and azathioprine. Those drugs are very strong and they require an awful lot of blood monitoring. So every couple of weeks you'd be asked to have blood tests, and then we would have a look at them here in our system to make sure the levels are okay. If those treatments don't work, we would move on to what we call IVIG, so that's intravenous immunoglobulins. So just a small little cannula in the back of your hand, and it's a blood product that we give you. Takes all day to give, but it in theory is full of good antibodies and will boost your immune system that way.
What made you want to be a myasthenia nurse?
So I used to work on the neurology wards here at King's, and then I was there for about 8 to 10 months and decided to move to intensive care. And then when I was in intensive care, I'd looked after a few patients with myasthenia, and then I saw this job advert. So I applied as I thought it'd be really interesting to be able to set up the role. No one in the hospital had done this job before, so it meant I could come in and put my own kind of unique touch on things.
How do people react when you tell them that they have myasthenia?
They can react in different ways, I'd say. So some people could be quite upset because obviously it's a long-term condition. It has no cure, although treatment is very effective. People can get quite upset by the fact that they're going to have this for life. But some patients would be quite relieved to know that there is an answer to all the problems they've been experiencing. And it's almost like a weight off their shoulders to know that there is solutions there for them.
How does this job make you feel?
So I really enjoy my job. I think I'd be lying if I said I love it every single day. There are very difficult days in the job, just with patient caseload, with patients being very sick sometimes. But overall, I really do enjoy it. I think I'm in a very unique position that I've got quite a small group of patients to look after, who are all quite lovely and make my job very easy for me.
During my appointments with Dr. Norwood and Shauna Hughes, they told me about a charity called MyAware, and I reached out to them for this project. I got in contact with a very helpful Sarah Bailey, who is their coordinator for South East and Sussex.
Okay, so as a charity, we rely on generous donations from the public as we don't receive any government or NHS funding. We have regional organisers and regional fundraisers who apply to trusts and organisations like the National Lottery Community Fund and Awards for All, and they help us run our support groups and our regional conferences. We're also extremely grateful to Children in as they support our nationwide kids group with funding. We encourage people to take part in fundraising events like the London Marathon, which happened a couple of weeks ago, and the Great North Run. And we also ask if they can organise events of their own, like cake sales, sponsored walks, charity gigs, that sort of thing. Okay, we fund support services and awareness and research projects at specialist centres across the UK, including the John Ratcliffe Centre based in Oxford. We provide the initial funding for our specialist nurses, which the NHS can then take on after 1 to 2 years. We currently have 4 specialist nurses one in Oxford, Glasgow, Southampton and London. Okay, well, as we are the only UK-based charity that supports people living with myasthenia, we run 53 regional support groups across the country, and they generally meet several times a year to enable people living with the condition to get together, share experiences, find out information, and just get together. And we offer weekends away for our national kids group and young generation group. We publish a quarterly newsletter, which is available online. We run several closed Facebook groups for 24/7 peer support, which we monitor and help out with medical questions. And we offer the services of an accredited counsellor and a benefits advisor. Our website too, www.myaware.org, has a wealth of helpful information on it.
Dr. Norwood told me about an operation during one of my appointments called a thymectomy, which is where they break the breastbone and remove the thymus gland. I went for this option without a second thought, as she told me that it may help reduce the symptoms and that I may not need to take as much medication as before.
I remember sitting on the train going to college and listening to my music and thinking, if I can recite every single word to this song, it would be a good omen and the operation would be successful and I'd be in a life without medication. The date was set for the 13th of February 2018 and I was strangely looking forward to this date because I wanted the time of college.
The 13th of February came around really quickly, and I had to wake up at 6 a.m. that morning to leave for the hospital. I finally arrived at the hospital and had to wait around for what felt like hours, as I really needed to eat and drink. I still wasn't scared yet, but the fear finally set in when I was rolled through a set of double doors where then I had to leave my mum and dad. Once through these set of double doors, they asked me my name and date of birth. Once I had answered these questions, they rolled me through another set of doors into the operation room, where they started to talk to me. The next thing I knew, I blacked out. Once I came round, I was a little bit scared, as I had forgotten where I was, and I was surrounded by a bunch of people that I had no idea who they were. I spent that day sleeping and just resting. I fell asleep and then got moved into another room, which was more public, where I was then told the best way to get better was by doing a lot of exercise, and that's what I did. I spent the majority of the day just walking up and down the same corridor, trying to speed up my recovery. 2 days after my operation, I was let out, where I spent the next 3 weeks relaxing, walking, and of course playing Xbox. I remember one time where I was sitting on the sofa where I had to call for Megan to help me get up, as I was stuck in an unusual position. I was stuck with my head resting on the sofa and my legs holding me up, in a crab position. She helped me up and asked me how did I get stuck like that, to which I just started laughing and went, I have no idea. And she started laughing as well. 3 weeks after my operation, I then headed back to college. By that time, I had managed to reduce the amount of medication I was taking to the point where I was taking none. I've now been medication free for a year, and I have a scar on my chest which I'm okay with, as it meant that my symptoms went away. From my experience, I have found that it is important to surround yourself with good people, as they can help take your mind off things that are going on around you, and they can help you enjoy your life and have fun. I remember on multiple occasions, when I would laugh, my friend would laugh at me, which meant he would snort, which meant that I would laugh, which meant he would laugh, and we would be then stuck in a loop of laughter, making the whole situation seem brighter and not as dark. They would say things such as, "You broke Dan to whoever made me laugh," and they would call me Dan who couldn't smile. This would make me laugh and help me cope with the situation. I'd like to thank Dr. Norwood, Shauna Hughes, and Mr. Whittaker for getting me to a medication-free life. I would also like to thank Sarah Bailey for all the hard work she does, as without her, Shauna Hughes wouldn't have had the funding to help me in this period of my life. And I would also like to thank her for doing the interview with me.